Welcome, everyone, to All Women Driven, the podcast where we are driving women's stories forward by looking at how they got to where they are today. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify. I forgot. I'm Sarah Davis. Welcome. Don't forget to like and share where you're listening. If you like my channel, you should check out the Law MacArthur YouTube channel where we have all information on everything Ford, dealer news, scheduling notes, all of that. We do a live stream every Tuesday night. Ford Video Guy, that one is wonderful. He blogs about all the things he does to his Bronco, Maverick, and Mach-E. So go check out that one. Also, Ragnar Khan, All Train Nation, they're wonderful friends. So go check them out. And Johnny's Car Can Reviews, he's like the Law MacArthur version in Canada. So check out all of them. They are wonderful, great supporters. And we absolutely love what they do. This week's guest is, Kathryn.
Hi.
Hi. So, what is your part in automotive?
So I have actually spent my entire career in the automotive aftermarket side of the business.
Okay.
I was fortunate enough to turn my hobby into a career. I used to actually do some road racing, some drag racing. I used to take my vehicle to car shows. And I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to actually come work in the industry.
Okay. That's awesome. So that's your full time.
Yes.
Okay. So in that, so you sell aftermarket or
So I actually own my own automotive marketing company where I help
okay.
small to medium sized businesses with their go to market strategy, with new product launches, event
Perfect.
attendance. I have been really fortunate to work with some really cool manufacturers over the years, some distributors, retailers. I've spent 20 years in the automotive aftermarket.
Yeah.
And again, because it's my passion, but it's also been something I've been very successful at.
Awesome. Now, Melissa mentioned something about SEMA.
Yeah, so I do currently sit on the SEMA board of directors. It is
Okay.
a 3-year term, and I'm on my second 3-year term. So I'm actually coming up
Okay.
on 6 years of being
Wow.
on the SEMA board of directors, and that board really is the driving force of the automotive aftermarket. Not only are we responsible for supporting the direction of the SEMA show, we also help support over 7,000 SEMA member businesses. These are businesses that pay an annual dues in order to be a part of SEMA, the association. And SEMA is constantly fighting for different regulatory emissions, props, all kinds of things that are happening to our businesses that are negatively affecting them. So, what we figured out about 50 years ago was if we all banded together our voices, we could actually be more successful when fighting these types of issues if we were a collective unit called the SEMA membership alone. And so
Okay.
I sit on that board and I help fight for little businesses.
Wow, I didn't realize there was so much to SEMA. I've been to the SEMA show, but I didn't realize there was so much behind that.
Yeah, the show
That's
actually
awesome.
only exists because of the association. The association, and just a quick story, the association actually was created because there were about 4 or 5 founding companies that were all getting their parts and their logos stolen by Revell. And Revell was actually a little toy car maker where you would actually make
Yes.
a kit out of it. And they didn't ask for these companies' approval to use those logos. And so when they would individually call the company to complain, they would ignore them. But once they formed a coalition, a collection, and they actually said, no, like we're going to fight you over that, they said, okay, fine, no, we'll pay you for it. So then they figured out their voices were stronger together. And then it just, kind of snowballed
Yeah.
from there. And a lot of people don't know this, but the first SEMA show was actually at Dodger Stadium. It was actually
Wow.
in the concession area of Dodger Stadium because that's how small it was at the time. It was just a few
Yeah.
booths. And then it's just collectively grown over the years. And now I think there's
Yeah.
almost like 2,500 booths at SEMA at the SEMA show now.
Right. It's like one haul per day, I think is the rule.
I don't even know if that because one, two, three, four, five. There's 5 halls now, so that
Yes.
actually doesn't even work anymore.
I know we did an entire day in just the West Hall this year. I walked the floor twice.
Yeah.
once Walton was editing and all of that. So it's huge. But that is amazing.
Yeah.
And then you were Melissa's partner for Rebel.
Yeah. So a few years ago, I was told about this thing called the Rebel Rally. And I'd been in automotive my entire life. And I was like, I've never heard of this. What is this thing called? And I started kind of stalking the girl that was doing it that I knew. And I kind of did my research. And as I found more and more about it, I said, oh my God, like, I've got to do this. And I didn't know anything about navigation, one single thing. I've off roaded, but I've never like done it with a map and a compass.
Right.
So I got really fortunate that I got aligned with Ford because we were actually helping create some Broncos during the during the launch of the brand new Bronco. And so at the time I worked for 40 Parts and they came to us and said, "Can you help us build some aftermarket parts for these because we want to launch it at Easter Jeep Safari and kind of compete with Jeep on, hey, these are completely modular and you can customize and
Yeah.
personalize them however you want, just like a Jeep." And so, luckily, I was able to connect with them and ask them if I could be one of their Ford factory teams, and they said yes. And so I did it with a different partner my first two times. And the third time, Melissa was like, "Hey, do you want to come do it with me?" And I actually really enjoyed Melissa. I thought, you know what, this could be a lot
Yeah.
of fun. And she's a competitor. She wants to win. And
Yes.
I'm in that same boat. Like I want to win. So I said, okay, let's do it. And so our first time was this past year together, and it was phenomenal. We had a great time. We learned a
Yeah.
lot. We had a lot of adversity. You probably heard about
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But no,
Yeah. Awesome. So, um, you have a lot going on. You mentioned you have kids,
yes, I have
and
two boys, 9 and
okay,
10. And they are very rambunctious boys. If anybody out there has young boys, they understand what I'm talking about. They never
mine are
stop.
boys.
Yep. And we're in the sports phase where every single day is practice, a
Yeah.
game, some lesson, something is always happening.
Right. Yes. So, with all of that going on, do you have any side hobbies or anything that you do besides off-roading?
Um, oh, that's a great question. That takes up a lot of my time. I
Yeah.
do actually sit on another board,
Okay.
and it is called the Automotive Aftermarket Charitable Foundation. And this is actually a great charity for all of your listeners to know about. It's kind of a charity that a lot of people don't know what it is, but essentially, this is a charity that actually cuts checks to people within 48 hours of submitting an application for need, and it helps people during a crisis, and that could be a
Okay.
medical emergency, that can be a tragic accident, that can be wildfires in California. There are many people in our automotive industry that are in need, and this charity was solely developed to help those people specifically. We only help people that are working in the automotive aftermarket. So that could
Okay.
be people that work at dealerships, at collision centers, at speed shops, at AutoZone, Advance, whoever. If you have some kind of an emergency where you need financial aid, go to the Automotive Aftermarket Charitable Foundation. I know that's a lot to say, but if you can find that website, the application is very simple. And like I said, if you're approved within 48 hours, you have a check in your hand. So this is a charity for aftermarket people.
That is amazing.
Yes, it really is, especially right now with the wildfires here in California. Mudslides
Yes.
are now coming this week. There's
Mm-hmm.
just things happening all over the country, and this is just a
Yeah.
small part of how the automotive industry takes care of its own.
That is awesome. So, have you always been in automotive?
Yes, I take that back. I did actually do mortgages for like my first 2 years of being an adult, and my side hobby was actually doing car shows and stuff like that. And I'll tell you this quick story because it is everybody always gets a kick out of it. So one of my sponsors said, "You should come to the SEMA show." And I said, "What's the SEMA show? I've never even heard of this thing." And I go, "Well, it's in Vegas." And at the time I lived in Atlanta, and that wasn't down the street. So I had to do some planning and spend some money and come out there. And I remember, Sarah, I walked into the SEMA show, and I remember walking in there going, "What is this? Holy moly. I don't know where I am, but this is like Candyland. This is heaven for cars." So I
Yes.
remember walking up to people in their booths and going, "You get paid money to stand here and talk about car parts all day long? Like, I could do this. This is easy."
Right.
So I went back home on my flight to Atlanta. I packed up my house, I put it up for rent, I broke up with my boyfriend, I quit my job, and I said, I'm going to move to Southern California because at the time that's where, well, I guess it still is the automotive aftermarket mecca for cars. And I go, I'm going to move to California. And I did it. And I literally drove across the country the day after Christmas because, SEMA's in November. This was Christmas time. And I came out here and I said, well, I'm going to give it a year. Let's see what happens. If I can get a job in the automotive aftermarket, great. And if I can make myself situated, then I'll stay. Well, Sarah, that was almost 20 years ago. So
Yeah.
it worked.
Yeah. So, do you have family that's in automotive that got you started?
No. It was, and I'll give him the credit. It was my very first boyfriend when I was probably
Okay.
15 years old. Him and his dad would sit in the garage and they would tinker with their Z28 Chevy Camaro. And I was
Okay.
just enamored with it. I thought, oh, what is this? Like, how do you do this? And I just learned, how to, play with the motor, how to change a motor, how to do paint, how to do, body modifications, wheels, tires, suspension, all these things. And I just thought, this is
Yeah.
so cool. So when I bought my first car, my mother, this is actually a funny story. So I went to the car dealership because I wanted to buy a brand new car. And it was a Honda Civic Si. This is when SIs were everywhere. This was Fast and Furious time. Like they were like in. And I brought the car home and I started taking it apart. My mother goes, "What are you doing? You just bought a brand new car. Why are you taking the wheels off? Why are you taking this off?" And I said, "Well, I want to personalize it. I want to make it something that I made." She didn't understand that whatsoever. And I started modifying it myself. And then I was just in, like, it was like a vortex. I was sucked in and I was a part of it. And I was going to shows, I was going to races, stuff like that. And then
Yeah.
I sold the car and actually I made a couple of bucks on it. My mom was like, "Huh? Like you could do that?" And I go, "Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the thing." I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to keep her off my back. But it was a great experience and it really opened my eyes to learning how to actually do what you love to do as a job. If there's people out there that can turn a hobby into a career, then my God, go for it because it makes
Yes.
you feel like you're not working every day.
Yep. I had a video idea yesterday, and I go upstairs to our new guy, and I'm like, okay, so I have this idea, and I go over it, and I'm like, oh, you would be even better. Have you seen the new Expedition? He goes, no, because he's not a car guy, and I'm like, okay, so I'm really excited about this, and he's like, why aren't you in sales? I'm like, because I don't need to be.
Yeah.
I love what I do in the videos and everything. So why do I need to be in sales when I can be excited about the product in videos?
Yes,
Like, I don't need to do anything else. This is perfect. So, in fact, I think with Melissa, I said, is it a job if you love what you do?
great point.
It's not. It's fun. So, yeah, that's wow. I mean, my grandfather's a mechanic, and
Mm,
so like but I couldn't imagine taking things apart and doing all of that at this time. I'd want
yeah,
someone to be like beside me, walking me through it.
yeah, and
No.
the vehicle has changed over the years. We've gone away from so many different aspects of how motors were built, how they were assembled,
Mm-hmm.
access to vehicles, OBD2 computers,
Yep.
I mean, fuel injection, all of these
Yes.
things have changed over the years, and you've had to adapt, and it's an interesting position that we're in because there's a lot of electric, there's now hydrogen coming to the market.
Yep.
um, there's a lot of new things that are coming about and you have to be really skilled at all of that, and I can't imagine uh, how difficult that must be now to be a builder or a
Oh,
mechanic in
yeah.
some capacity.
It's crazy. Although like with Tim, my dad, he does all of his own modifications to his Bronco.
Yeah,
My favorite one was we were ready for Supercell, and he was wanting to add a trail cam, so he got an aftermarket, um, oh, dash cam, and
yeah,
he's wiring it in. And I go to grab a drink, and it's 9 o'clock. It's dark out. We're using headlamps, and I hear a pop. I'm like, "What was that?" And I go around. The fender's off, and I'm like, "You can do this? Like, what are you doing? Are you breaking your car right now at 9 o'clock at night when we're supposed to be heading up a mountain tomorrow? Like, what are
yeah,
you doing?"
yeah.
But we got it figured out.
There are passionate people that if they want something done, they'll figure out how to do it. And that's kind of what, modifying your vehicle has always been about. It's
Mhm.
personalizing it to the things you want it to do. It's, modifying it to be noticed, personalizing it so that people will go, "Ooh, that looks really cool," or "Wow, that's a really neat feature." That's what car shows were back in the day for me. It was all about being different and being unique and
Yep.
showing off new products. We were the influencers back in the day.
Right?
When
Yes.
we would actually go buy the product and sell the product and then show it off to our friends. And then
Mhm.
we would take pictures of it and put it on MySpace because that's how old I am. And we would just show it off there. Like that's kind of like how we influence people. It was all
Yep.
word of mouth and face to face. Like it wasn't digitally like it is now.
Right? So that brings me to vehicle preference. What is your vehicle preference?
So I actually own a Bronco,
Okay.
Raptor. I was lucky enough to get one early on back in 22. And so,
Okay.
funny enough, the color I chose was Velocity Blue, and that was because my Honda Civic was blue. I love
Okay.
the color blue.
Yep.
I've only had it twice on a vehicle, so this was kind of like almost like coming full
Going back.
circle again for me. Yeah, and so I have a 2022 Ford Bronco Raptor. I've had a plethora of vehicles. I probably had to have more vehicles than I have fingers over my years. But my favorites were the SI. I had a Scion TC, actually a couple of those, and fully built those. Put a supercharger on one. My SI had nitrous on it. I mean, it was, I don't know what I was thinking. I just wanted to go fast. I did get
Yep.
into motorcycles for a little bit. I had a ZX6R that I would track. Yeah, it was. I've had so many
Yeah.
different types of vehicles, but Broncos are where it's at now for me because I can take the family. We can go out off roading, and I am the coolest mom in the pickup line.
That is awesome. Um, so you said that you went and bought a car. So what was it hard to get into it and start doing all of everything?
Yeah, when I was 17 and I first bought that car, I there was no YouTube. You didn't know how to do anything. And so it was a lot of bringing people in that knew someone else. And it was a collective effort to install things. Because we just didn't know things. There wasn't like a Google that we could go and find things. So you were really reading the manufacturer's directions a lot, and most of them were wrong or not in English. So it was difficult, but I had a lot of really good supporters around me that wanted to see me succeed, and they would help me out. I would go to shops. I would actually say, "Hey, I want to install this myself, but I need to use your tools, or I need to use your lift, or something like that."
Yeah.
But as I entered into the automotive aftermarket, I it was very apparent to me that this was very male oriented. It was not necessarily friendly to women. It wasn't friendly to women who wanted to learn. So you had to really find what I would call alliances or mentors that would kind of help bring you along and usher you in.
Mhm.
And that was important to me to find really good people like that at the beginning. And once you had those people and they would almost, and I hate to say this, vouch for you, then that would open up more and more doors for you.
Yeah. So what got you into the aftermarket that you do now?
Yeah, so for me, it was all about personalization and customization. I wanted
Yeah.
to look different and be different. And so I wanted to work for companies that were kind of pushing the marketing limits and wanted to do something that was just different. And so I ended up working for a couple wheel companies. I worked for a bull bar and step company. I ended up working for an exhaust company by the name of Magnaflow. I did that for 7 years, and they were such a joy to work with. That was a company that really enjoyed marketing. And I will say there's not a lot of companies out there that are willing to spend the money or put the focus on marketing like Magnaflow did. And it made my job super easy to showcase product, to bring new products to life, to go to different events around the world, and then to really do some great partnerships with ambassadors or racers or influencers. And so it made it really easy. And the automotive aftermarket is all about partnerships, relationships,
Mhm.
and that's one of the things I've really enjoyed about working in this industry is the friendships that I have formed as a result of that, but also all the people I've gotten to meet because they've been open minded to creating um, really great partnerships that allow both companies to move forward. And so
Yeah.
that's what the aftermarket's really all about is it's
Mhm.
kind of like high school, a bunch of people that are in the same school, but sometimes we move around classrooms or we have different
Yeah.
teachers or we're on different floors, but we're all together and we're all, kind of trying to move this industry forward.
Mhm. Yeah. I've seen that when we've done our work with RTR, Roush, those brands and whatnot. So
Yeah.
we have an amazing aftermarket team here that does a great job putting builds together. So, how can we encourage women to get into the community more? Or how do you help encourage women?
So one of the things that I love about SEMA is they actually have their own network. It's called SBN, SEMA Businesswomen's Network, and this is a
Okay.
free membership for any woman who is interested in being in the automotive aftermarket. You go on SEMA.org, find SBN, and literally register yourself. And what it does is it gives you access to a pool of women that are in the automotive aftermarket. Some of them are beginners, some of them are students, let's say engineers, mechanics, some of them are juniors in their businesses, and some of them are VPs, presidents, or even owners of businesses. And
Okay.
these women are some of the most welcoming people I've ever met. I have had the pleasure of knowing almost all of the chairs of this group. And what's been so great about it is women. There is an event during SEMA, it's called Gear Up Girl. And this is a way for any woman who's in the automotive industry to come to this event for free, walk through the door, and literally have a plethora of networking. There's hundreds of women that are in this room. They have these games where they make you kind of walk the room and talk to people. But they also give you opportunities to come to their women's leadership forum. You get to work on, women only builds. There was a 20th it was the second build that SBN has ever done. The first one was on a Ford Mustang 10 years ago, and then they did it again this past, I guess it was 2 years ago now, on the new Ford Bronco. And
Okay.
so they actually outfitted an entire Bronco only with women touching the vehicle. I'm talking wheels,
Wow.
tires, suspension, a wrap, interior. Everything was outfitted on this vehicle. It actually went up for auction and sold through one of the SEMA Cares, one of the charity partners. But there's so many opportunities for women to get involved. If you ever need an introduction, I'm also happy to give out my contact information if somebody is interested and they don't know where to start. Reach out to a woman and just say, I want to get started. Where do I go? And there are so many women that will help others out there. We want more women in this industry. We know how valuable they are and how much they bring to the table. So we want to
Mhm.
have as many as possible.
Yeah. I mean, Ford did their commercial where they were like, let's build a car that's only for men. And they took off everything that women have invented to help the automotive industry. They took off the windshield wipers and a bunch of other gadgets and it's like, okay, here you go.
Yeah.
Women have contributed this much.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
yeah, it was amazing. Oh, I was going somewhere with that and I just lost it. Um, oh, Women in Automotive. Do you go to that conference? I believe it's in Tennessee this year.
Um, So there's a few. So there
Okay.
is Women in Auto Care. That's another one that's actually in Atlanta next
Okay.
month. I have done that one several times. That is really great. That one is literally for more of the apex side of the business. So these are replacement parts instead of, I'd say, performance parts like SEMA's
Okay.
really been attached to. There are so many different women's conferences out there, and I don't think there's necessarily a bad one. If there's a
Hmm.
bunch of women in the room that are interested in automotive, that's not a bad room to be in.
Right.
So I definitely do your research, find out the one that makes sense to you, maybe the one that's closest to you.
Hmm.
A lot of these events do cost money. That's why I like the SBN one because it's free for any woman to get in, just to get your feet
Okay.
wet. But I've done women in auto care, women in automotive, SBN. There's so many. It's
Hmm.
definitely, like I said, a great way to just get started.
Okay. Yeah. So I you mentioned Apex. Can you tell
Yeah.
me what the difference between Apex and
Yes.
SEMA is?
Yeah. So Apex is actually owned by a different company called Auto Care. And
Okay.
Apex is actually at the Santa Expo at the, of course, I'm forgetting the name of it, the other hotel.
The
The
links.
Venetian. Yes. So
Oh,
it's
yes.
actually downstairs of the Venetian. That's where Sam's Expo is. And SEMA is actually at the convention center. So SEMA is
Mhm.
usually known for the automotive aftermarket in the sense of performance parts, accessories, anything that's kind of going to, personalize, perfect your vehicle to your personality. Apex is more on the replacement side. You broke a headlight, you need to get it replaced. This is where you would find automotive aftermarket suppliers or manufacturers of replacement parts. Maybe it's
Okay.
wheels, maybe it's filters, maybe it's floor mats. It could be a plethora of things. But a lot of the um, retailers like AutoZone, Advance, O'Reilly's, Pep Boys, Napa, all of them are usually going to be on the Apex side of it because they're looking for replacement parts. SEMA
Mhm.
is the wild, wild west. It is anything and everything. There could be actually companies that are exhibiting at both because they have product lines that fit into both.
Okay.
Um, Apex is a little bit of a smaller show. It is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday versus SEMA, which is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We have about 2,500 booths. I think they have about, don't quote me. I think it's under 1,000. So it's just a different mix. But there are people that will go to both.
Okay. Yeah, because I think when we get registered as media, we can actually go to both.
Yeah, we have a partnership. SEMA has a partnership with Apex where we've kind of allowed the badges because we use the same badging system where you can actually go to both.
Okay.
Um, it's just a way to make sure that people can flow but backwards and forwards.
Okay. Yeah. So, who or what inspires you?
Who? Who or what? I've been in this industry for such a long time. Uh, I am it's not lost on me that I could have gone into the mortgage business and done something like that, but I wouldn't have enjoyed it. And so I've really looked up to people that have been kind, who have always provided access for me and opportunities for me. So I can name 100 people that have really just been inspiring and open and welcoming to me. And I would just say the entire industry. I mean, there are so many opportunities for people, for women, for outsiders, for learners, people that just want to get involved because this is something they're passionate about. And if you are able to connect with the right person, you can make this a career. Gone are the days where people look down upon mechanics or people that are in automotive because maybe that's not cool or that doesn't pay a lot. That's not true. There's so many opportunities for people. So, my kids inspire me because knowing that this industry could go away if we aren't, forged together and working together and finding a pathway for the automotive industry to go forward. Um, I think about what's happening in regulation right now. I'm grateful for the president to say that EV mandates are gone and
Mhm.
the consumer can now choose what vehicle they want. I live in the state of California where we were up against a deadline where you didn't have a choice anymore and you had to buy an
Mhm.
electric vehicle. And I think that's wrong. I think that, for times of today and the economy and just engineering and innovation, it needs to be about companies that are building vehicles, and people should be able to choose a vehicle that fits their lifestyle.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important nowadays. And so having that removed and that hanging over us has now been gone. Now people can
Yeah.
choose what vehicle they want to drive, I think is great. And that's all because SEMA actually went and lobbied Washington, D.C. and said, no, like we aren't going to allow this to happen. And SEMA created its own pack. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but there's the SEMA show, there's the SEMA Association, but there are a bunch of people and companies that banded together and donated money and went to SEMA every year. I've done this trip several times. It's called the DC Rally, and we literally walk um, uh, through Congress and we say, you're going to take our meeting and we're going to tell you why this is important to us, to our industry, and to people that want to, buy vehicles. And I like to believe that all of that work that we did is a reason why
Mhm.
we now have walked that back and now we have the ability to choose. So, who inspires me? Everybody that's willing to give up their time and forge this industry together.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine going all EV because you have people that are using F450s to haul trailers and haul things.
And it seems
Like,
like that makes sense in California because we have all these charging stations all over the place. We don't. We don't have the infrastructure. I mean, look at
no.
the California wildfires that just happened and power was shut off to people for days on end. What were
Yep.
they supposed to do? How were they supposed to charge a vehicle? It just doesn't, it's not logical right now. It
Yep.
may work for some people, but it doesn't work for everybody. And a mandate
Yes.
doesn't help anybody. It actually stops innovation. It
Well,
stops people
and they
from,
don't have electric vehicles in all the model lines at this
absolutely,
time.
right?
As Super Duties, they have a truck, but it doesn't haul things like an actual truck.
Yeah.
Um, it's just not there.
Well, even fleet systems, there are trucks that are, dropping off and, transporting things around the state. Then they had to be
Yes.
electric as well. How was that going to work? Our
Right?
commerce would ultimately come to an end because we couldn't actually deliver the things we are used to delivering every day because we didn't have a vehicle that was electric that could do it.
Yes. Yep.
It's wild.
It is. It's crazy. And I'm glad that they were able to stop that.
Yes.
Because that would just be, I don't know what we would do.
Yeah,
A lot of people wouldn't know what they would do. Especially those that, might not be able to buy a car.
absolutely.
You know, they aren't in the place. I know we aren't in a place to be able to buy an EV.
Right.
So it's
Exactly.
just at that time. Um, yeah. So let's see. Now in Rebel, do you have any fun stories?
Do I? Rebel is all about the long game. And I've seen a lot of teams really get discombobulated because they couldn't get over one little hurdle. And some of those hurdles are gigantic and they hurt at the time. But one of my favorite stories, me and my partner Tori, I think it was our I don't know if it was our first time or our second time. Here's the problem: when you do too many of these, you don't remember which time it was. But we were actually in Glamis, and we were on the backside of one of the dunes, and we it was early in the morning. We had just started. We had just gotten checkpoint number one, and we were looking for two, and we come up on the blue flag, and I'm looking at the terrain, I'm looking at the map, and I go, I think this is it. And I had Tori look at it, and she goes, yeah, I think it's it. I go, okay, I'm gonna click. She goes, okay. I click, and I start to write down the coordinates. And if anybody knows on Rebel, when you get to a checkpoint, you write down the coordinates because they're supposed to match up to whatever checkpoint you're supposed to be at. And we're with another group, and the other group kind of goes, "Hey, I don't think this is it." And I'm like, "Well, I already clicked, so I have to write down the coordinates." And I write it down. And I go, "Oh, this doesn't match up for two. Maybe it's three. It's not three. Maybe it's four." I literally go down the entire list. There are only 28 checkpoints that day. This checkpoint was number 28. And in Rebel, you cannot skip checkpoints. You have to go from one to two to three to four, all the way in order. And if you miss one, if you go out of order, then you can't go back and get the one prior. Well, it's
Oh
8:30 in the
no.
morning, and I've just clicked 28. So I'm like, I look at Tori, and I'm almost in tears because I realize we have clicked 28 and we are done for the day. We cannot go backwards and we cannot go forward because there's nothing to go get. And I'm just sitting there in the seat, just trying to figure out how am I going to tell her this. And she's out of the car. She's talking to another team, and I had to tell her. I go, Tori, I clicked 28. She's like, what? And so we just kind of sat there, and we were bummed. We didn't know what to do, and we're sitting there talking through it. And she goes, well, what do you want to do? And I go, well, I don't want to go back to base camp and just sit there all day. Like, that sucks. She said, well, why don't we just continue on? And the other team with us said, let's just continue on, and let's just keep going. Like, your day is ruined. Who cares? Just keep going. And as we're driving to the next checkpoint, all of a sudden it dawns on me, we check the rules and we realize that the checkpoints have an open and close time. So you can't get there before and you can't get there after. Well, that checkpoint, because it was 28, was actually closed. It wasn't even open yet. So what that's
Oh.
now considered is a wide miss. So yes, we lost 10 points, but we could keep going because it didn't count.
Right.
Oh, all of a sudden we were energized, we were motivated, we were singing songs, we were like, let's go. And Sarah will
Right.
tell you that adversity was traumatic. It was horrific. but we kept going and we didn't know that for sure, Sarah. We thought that would be the case, but we said, who cares at this point? Let's just keep going. That was our best day. We ended up getting 90% of the points that day because we went for everything. There was nothing that was holding us back. We went crazy. We just said, let's just go for everything. And we got back to base camp that afternoon, and and I'm like nervous to check our score because it could be a zero, right? And I got in there, and Melly runs the scoring system, and she's sitting there and she's like kind of giddy looking at me, and I'm like, oh God, like how bad is it? And she goes, no, and she hands me the paper, and I went, oh my God. She goes, we're so happy for you. We were so scared that you guys were going to come back to base camp and just end your day. And that was a moment, that was a lesson of
Yeah.
keep going. Don't you dare give up. It could be
Mhm.
bad, it's a hurdle, but keep going because there's a bit much bigger track that you got to go over. And that was a terrifying story, but also a great story. It had a happy ending, so I love telling that one.
Yeah, that's awesome. I told Melissa that I'm trying to train for navigation so I can hopefully go once
Yeah,
my boys are older. Right now it's a lot, but
I get it.
hopefully someday.
I will say, I wanted to drive, and my partner, she wanted to drive. And so then we thought, well, we'll just switch off. But let me tell you, navigation is not really something you want to switch off from. Once you're in, like you're locked in. And it is a very difficult thing to learn. And I think some of the women that have really kind of mastered it have done it, have done so well at it because they are constantly doing it on a
Okay.
reoccurring basis. So if navigation is what you want to do, it's practice. It's practice makes
Yeah.
perfect. It's learning how to read terrain. It's learning how to read your CPs because sometimes they're not in longitude, latitude. Sometimes they're in heading and distance. Sometimes it's to. Sometimes it's from. Sometimes they're in decimal. Sometimes you have to convert it.
Okay.
It's like it can be really really tricky, and Emily Miller loves to give you um you know ways to trick you, and so you've
Right.
got to be on your game every day. And here's the problem with Rebel: it's 8 days.
Yes.
You were tired, you were hungry, you were exhausted, you were sleeping on the ground, you're cold, you're hot. There are so many different um things that she throws
Variations.
at
Yeah.
you. Yeah. And you have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to keep going. And that's where people start to struggle on the back half of the week because they can't keep up. And um, I've heard some of the best people that have won Rebel, they talk about pace because you have to keep going and be strong every single day. You can't lag. You are hunting checkpoints, hustling and going. And if you're lollygagging, if you're chatting it up and you're hanging out and you're not focused, that is how podiums are missed, literally because of that.
Yeah. Here in Kansas, we don't have too much terrain, so I wouldn't be able to train the terrain. So I'm going for navigation just because math makes sense to me.
I'm a math person too. I am more mathematics than I am topography. And that's where Melissa shines. She is I will actually call her a topography expert. She can go like this and go, yeah, it's right there. And I'm like, no, 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 the math doesn't work. She's like, no, no. Even we together, I think, are a really great team because we complement each other on different skill sets. And I'm like
Hmm.
you, I am all about math and numbers, and I want my mileage to match, I want my time to match. I need all of this stuff to come to a perfect alignment. And um, it can be difficult, but we always joke in the car, we need three pieces of data. Two really good ones, but three would be great. And it could be distance, it could be a heading, it could be topography. Honestly, sometimes it could be other team. If I see another team that's really close by, I'm like, well, we can't be that far off if they got here too, right? So it could be a lot
Yeah.
of those things, and you have to be able to judge that and use that data and make a decision. And Sarah, this is where it gets really key: make a decision and go. Because if you lollygag and you're like second guessing yourself, oh, let's back up a little bit. Oh, let's go forward. Oh, maybe it's over here. That's where you can literally just waste time in your day.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining me.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed this. Um, so, are you going to continue with Rebel?
ooh, that's a good question. Time will tell. This is the 10th year, so Anything can happen on the 10th anniversary of Rebel.
Right? Yep. All right. Well, have a wonderful day.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for the time. And this was wonderful.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Join us in 2 weeks for the next episode of All Women Driven, where we are taking women's stories and driving them forward by looking at where women or how women got to where they are today. So, have a wonderful day. Bye.